All right, let's jump into it.
I'm tapped out of hot takes.
No
No,
way.
that's not the case.
No way.
Gotcha.
You bring up Keon. Mike, where do you put him on your list?
Again, I want the expectations to be
Massive.
This is the Buffalo Plus Podcast, brought to you by Connors and Ferris.
All right, welcome back to the Buffalo Plus Podcast presented by Connors and Ferris. Mike Catalana, Dan Fates. I am Jenna Cottrell. Gentlemen, we have made it. There is Bills football. It is back. Gentlemen. Should I restart?
Nope. Keep it
so
in.
good.
Too excited. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. We always appreciate it. All the gentlemen out there. It's not one thing, it's another. Okay, let's talk.
And wherever you get your podcasts, audio,
yes.
coming with us.
Yes.
I
No,
just
Dan,
figured we'd
you
make
make
it
a good
seamless.
point. I always try to do that later on, but you're right.
I want an official ruling here.
I'm right.
Is that
She said it.
You're whatever.
I want an official ruling. Was that an interruption?
I blacked out, so I don't know. I'm just so used to it that I don't know.
For those counting at home, we are already at one. That is how we've started out this podcast.
Okay. We do want to remind everyone, if you are on the go, you can just listen to our podcast. It's available wherever you find your podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, all those things. So we always really appreciate it.
I find myself listening back to our podcast, usually when I'm doing stuff like cutting the grass, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that was pretty good. And then I hear myself, I'm like, you got to stop talking so much.
I think that's a universal thought.
Yeah.
Do you ever think that, Dan?
I try not to listen back to it, in all honesty. That's about it.
I will. And I usually am just mad at myself. But
Yeah.
that's fine.
Wow.
It's Well, like
impressive.
Gemelin, whatever I said. Like, it's just like, what are we
was
doing?
it a couple weeks ago?
It started with an F. Was it full force? No.
Freely. Something freely.
Free
Flowing.
Free flowing.
I did listen to the podcast that I wasn't on because I could listen. I can't hear myself.
Yeah, I get
Free
it.
flowing.
Okay. All right. We're going to do our top 5 storylines heading into training camp. And this year is going to be fun. It's going to be different as well. We're also going to answer some questions, and then we're going to do a little hot takes that we have as we enter camp that starts later on this week here in the Rochester area. St. John Fisher has always been a great host. All right, let's jump into it.
I'm tapped out of hot takes.
No way.
No, that's not the case.
No way.
Gotcha.
Just say the limit does not exist. Okay, let's talk storylines. What do we want to start with?
I think the glaring elephant in the room.
Wide receiver room?
Yeah. I think that's the biggest concern. I think that's what everybody wants to talk about as we get forward into this. For those listening on the audio side, we will have videos out every single day from training camp on the YouTube channel. Like, comment, subscribe. But we also were talking about doing a pass catcher of the day because I think this is the most talked about thing. It is a nearly completely revamped room that, like, Josh Allen isn't a storyline heading into camp.
No.
But it's who is he throwing the footballs to that you can depend on. And the one thing that always stands out to me is that, yeah, there can be guys that can catch passes and all these things. I look at it as who's the guy on 3rd and 14 that's getting the ball that defenses are worried about. And as of right now, as we head into training camp, I think that's still to be undecided.
I see what you're saying here. So I'm going to take you away from 3rd and 14 because 3rd and 14 is difficult.
Correct.
I'm thinking 3rd and 6. That's going to happen all the time.
Fair.
3rd and 6. Who's the guy? And I think Diggs was that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think it certainly was the guy that grabbed the attention from the defense most of the time. 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7. Like, your point is, who is the guy? It's not always about total numbers. It's about the important plays. And is he there? We see that. And that's when you start talking about Kincaid in terms of pass catchers, that's what you see with Kelsey.
Yeah.
It's not always that he puts up 150 yards, but damn, he just seems to catch the one they always need.
The
They should cover
backbreaking.
him.
Yes.
They should cover.
Yes. Yeah, the clutch player who you
Yeah.
go to, who you're confident in a big time situation that, yeah, maybe it isn't a 3rd and 14, but it is that necessary play to
Yep.
continue the drive. That is what I put down. I said, who will emerge as wide receiver 1? Because I think we have a list of names. And this actually segues great into a question that we want to thank Keon's Cookies for writing in.
Well done.
They wrote, how would you rank wide receiver 1 to 5 before seeing them at camp? And I think that's actually a really interesting point, because who do you have at number 1? Who do you have, at number 2, 3? Like, where do you right now think that these guys rank, Dan?
I think the one
You covered up your sheet.
I did.
We have sheets and Dan covered his up.
Yeah.
He thinks it's like a quiz that I'm not stealing Dan's answers.
No, I don't want Dan's answers.
I think, again, we are heading into camp, so a lot is still to be decided. We're recording this on July 22nd. They don't necessarily need a number 1 guy right now. I think MVS is the most accomplished wide receiver in this room. I think he's wide receiver 1. If we're starting tomorrow, lining up as wide receiver number 1.
I don't agree.
Yeah.
I think it's Curtis Samuel.
I agree with Michael.
I think he is the most consistent performer.
Consistent is the key in that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like drops have been such an issue for MVS, undeniable part of his game, that you look at the talent level and what the expectations are and some of the moments he's played in. Yes. But then you look at the consistency of play, and I think that's where you start to wonder, could this guy be the number 1 based on his history and those drops that he's had?
I think Samuel will line up 50-50 between running back and wide receiver. I think he's going to be in the backfield. I think he is much more of a gadget, gets a negative connotation. I don't think he's a gadget guy.
Just say he's Debo.
Yeah, that changes it.
I mean, Debo is
nice.
It's like saying Kincaid is Kelsey. Like, he's not, but you want him to play like him.
Yeah.
And so when you say in the backfield, but I don't want to see him getting 15 carries off tackle during a game.
No, but when I think of a number 1 wide receiver, I'm thinking of who's your X on a consistent basis. Who's going to line up as the X wide receiver? We're not trying to get inside the numbers here and break down all 22, but who's that guy that lines up on the outside a majority of the time? I think it's going to be MVS.
So if you were talking about the Niners in that case, and you have Debo and Ayuk.
Correct.
I still think Debo was the number 1 guy, and then Ayuk.
Number 1 guy and number 1 wide receiver, I think, are
that's interesting.
Viewed as 2 different things.
That's fair.
I think that Samuel could get the most touches out of this entire wide receiver room, but I don't think they're all going to be. I don't think he's going to be a guy that's going to catch 8 passes necessarily a game.
Jenna, I'm going to let you take this, because I can sense there's people sitting at home screaming into their computers saying, why aren't you talking about Khalil Shakir being the number 1 guy?
I mean, I think that's fair, because I think what we've seen from the Bills and just his usage at the end of last season, how much more involved he was, how much of a steadying guy he was, his ability to make big plays as well. I mean, when you talk about a guy on the outside, I think Khalil can be inside and outside. So maybe in terms of that, it kind of deters from him always being on the outside in your view of that X wide receiver. But that being said, like, yeah, I think Khalil is the type of player that you want to see. Bills fans certainly want to see his targets grow. And I think there is an opportunity for that. And I wouldn't be shocked if he is 1A or 1B and Curtis Samuel is 1A.
I'm afraid to think that way about Shakir.
Really?
So am I.
Only because I don't want the expectations to be set at a certain point, and he could progress, as I think he will progress. I think he's going to be a better player this year than he was last year. I'm just worried that people are going to think he turns into
something he's not
yet. That he could be, but it's a lot to go into another year. Again, you can say what you want, but Diggs is not on the field, which he's a gravity player. Like they say that in basketball all the time. Gravity guy is the guy that brings the attention to him, and other guys can get shots because you know he can shoot. Diggs was that guy for this team. He just was.
Yeah.
And so you lose that. So it's also going to be a little fluid here. It's going to evolve. And it may be in different games and different times. I have a lot of hope for Shakir. I just don't want people to be thinking right away he's going to be 9 catches, 120 yards, and do it every week, many weeks. I think he can get there.
Yeah, I think he's when I look at Shakir, I think, and this is the biggest compliment I can give him, he has a very high floor.
Yes.
I think we know what we're going to get out of him. I don't think he necessarily has the highest ceiling out of this wide receiver room. I think he has the highest floor. I think he's the most dependable guy that we have seen.
That's an interesting point.
But I think he's, and again, I know there are people out there that are smarter than me, and you can clip that for you, because I see him being, I think he's best fit as a Welker. I think he's best fit as an Edelman. I think him eating up the middle of the field is where he does his best work. I know he can get down the field. I know people are talking about his 40 time and it's the same as Diggs and all these things. His strengths to me don't scream number one guy. And they could develop into that. But I look at this and I even say, like, Keon has a lower floor and a higher ceiling.
I agree with that.
Than Khalil Shakir. So like when I'm balancing my expectations going into the season, I think there are 4 or 5 guys that could easily all have 600, 700 yards. I don't know who that guy is going to be. That is the guy that goes for 1,100.
You bring up Keon. Mike, where do you put him on your list?
Again, I want the expectations to be
massive.
Why not, right? Listen, the guy has, personality-wise, he got star written all over him.
Yep.
Absolutely.
He just has that. It's just not every rookie receiver comes in at the number one guy. It does happen.
Yep.
I mean, there have been a few guys that just walked in and they're like, they're the dude, and they play that way. I think it's going to take him a little while. I think because he's not a veteran receiver, the rest of this group has a lot of snaps in the NFL.
Yeah.
They just don't have them with the Buffalo Bills. That's why we joke about Shakir being the only guy who's caught a pass as a wide receiver from Josh in a game. The other guys do. I'll be fascinated to see him. I want to see him again. Expectations, where they are, and then can he exceed those? It may be in a given matchup, in a given game, after he gets his feet under him a little bit. It would be awesome if he just walks out there and he's, the guy they have a tough time guarding.
Yeah.
And that the other teams are pointing out, where's zero on this play, right? I just think it's hard for many rookies to start out that way. But I think he does have the possibility. Like you talk about that high ceiling.
Yeah.
I think he does.
Again, I'd have him as my wide receiver too. If camp started tomorrow.
Keon.
Keon is 2. MVS, Keon, Shakir would be my top 3. And then and then Samuel is that everywhere guy.
That's so interesting.
That I just think he's all over the place.
And by interesting, you mean wrong?
No, I just think it's like, because you're not talking about carries. You're talking about like big play potential.
I'm talking about when I see, and I know these guys line up everywhere. I know Diggs lined up inside and outside. I just think of like what I expect. And a lot of this is also, sounds funny, but it's like Shakir was really good as the number 3. Mm-hmm. So like, I think he fits there in the roles that he played last year. I think Coleman can be a better Gabe Davis. So I'm almost trying to insert pieces in to fit the puzzle that they had last year. And hopefully it's a better picture than what it was before.
Yeah. I just feel like they're going to rely on Shakir so much in terms of moving the chains. Like, I feel like he's going to be that guy that does that. You have Samuel that can add, like you said, some gadget opportunity. And then Keon, who's like your big play guy. Same with MVS. Yeah. But I think it's all in how you look at it in terms of wide receiver 1. That's why I say Samuel being 1A, Shakir being 1B, because I think the Bills are really going to have a lot of focus in that short, intermediate area, middle of the field type of thing.
And let me say, again, I have MVS as the 1 and Keon as the 2, when I don't really think I don't think Keon in 20 other teams is the 2. And I don't think MVS is a number 1 on any other team. Yes. It's just, you're trying to hodgepodge this together to figure out what works.
And by the way, in terms of targets, I think we may all agree that Kincaid's going to get the most.
Yes.
I agree.
So we're not counting him.
Wow, guys, we all agreed.
Right now. And by the way, any other wide receiver we want to mention?
Matt Collins?
He's firm.
And?
Justin Shorter.
Wide receiver 6.
You watch, Shorter's going to just kick but
He's going to have a preseason catch, and
Oh,
Everybody's
yeah.
gonna
Who's
go
the
crazy.
training camp darling for the wide
could be
receivers?
shorter.
Could be shorter.
Isn't it Dan Fates?
Not in our hearts, maybe. Maybe not in everyone.
I will say, for everybody that's pretty mean in the comments, everybody in person's pretty nice to me.
Yeah.
But I'm imagining we're going to get a couple Dan is wrongs walking through training camp.
Oh yeah, people say it all the time.
Yeah.
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 Just not usually it's through a keyboard, not necessarily to my face.
No, they
That's
text
always
me.
tough.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, God. You know what I got today? I was in the shoe store and a woman stopped me and she was like, "You are so tall." I was like, "Wow." She's like, "I knew you looked tall on TV, but you are so tall." I was like, "Okay."
Okay.
I'd actually, I'd rather have that than being wrong. So
I was going to say.
so there's that. Okay. All right. Thank you to Keon's Cookies for those
All right.
questions. All right, let's move on now to what will Von Miller be?
Ooh.
That is the gravity of that question. It's hard to be as bad as he was last year. I mean, that would be, I don't want to say impossible, but it feels like that would be just treacherous for this Bills team. So I feel like he looks better. He seems like he's trending in the right direction. But it's like, where do you set the bar for him? Because we know Von Miller, the Hall of Famer. We know what Von Miller was last year. Mike, where do you put kind of the benchmark at for this season?
Here's where I think you just have to forget about how much money he makes. He's on the roster.
See,
He's
I'm
on the
getting fired
roster
up,
still,
but
because he makes a lot of money. Like that's a tough cut.
they
Plus,
can't wait to move on.
I think that's a day's coming. This is not the day yet, right?
Correct.
He's going to be on the roster. So then you say to yourself, if you're Sean McDermott, Bobby Babich, the entire defense, and you're saying, how do we use Von the most? Honestly, in my opinion, he should be a pass rushing specialist. You get the most out of him in that way. They need the guy who comes in the game, passing situations, gets after the quarterback. I think if Von is going to be impactful in 2024, it's going to be in that role. It's a natural role for a guy who has played as many snaps as he has in his career to eventually play a little less, but be that guy who comes in. Let me tell you something. I'd take 30% of the snaps and very effective snaps, then running him out there every down or close to every down or a majority of the downs and trying to see if he can make plays for you. I'd rather see him be the highly, highly paid specialist.
Do you have a certain number of sacks that you would want to see?
I think he's got to have 9.
Wow.
To have a successful year.
I'm thinking he should, if he's going to be that guy for them, he needs, I'd say, I mean, there's nothing wrong with saying double digits. It's the NFL. 10 sacks in 17 games.
Wow.
Yeah, I think if he's going to be that. If he's not,
so
I guess I thought like, I mean,
you want him like a Jerry Hughes 5?
No. That's honestly, my expectations are like 5 or 6 because I just feel like
you talked about him bouncing back. Like obviously the season he had. It's tough to bounce back at 35.
That's what I'm saying.
Like that's where my level of concern is. And my other level of
Sorry.
Well, I'm saying if I have a high level of concern, but you're asking me where he needs to be to have a successful season, it's got to be 9.
I just think that to me seems so unattainable.
Listen,
It would have to be. And look,
you comment in. Well, how many sacks would it be for Von Miller to not forget last season, but to have a productive year?
To Jenna's point, if there was plays last year where he just was not getting to the quarterback,
he was non-existent.
It was non-existent. So even if he got a couple of sacks, like the majority of the time, and I'm sitting there watching him, and I'm going, like I'm sure you guys did too. Sometimes you're up there, and I just want to watch Von. I want to see what he's doing. You just didn't see it.
Yeah.
If that's the case, even if he gets a few, it's not impactful. You want to see him be a consistent pass rusher when he's in the game.
And the thing is, what concerns me, not only with Von's age and trying to bounce back from all of that, they didn't add another pass rusher.
No.
So Brandon Beane, salary cap isn't real, but they added some backup edge rushers. And they re-signed AJ Epinesa. And if you go on ESPN right now and you look at the depth charts, AJ Epinesa, I know it's a depth chart. Don't roll your eyes at me. I'm not the one that sets the depth chart on ESPN. This is what happens.
Who sets the depth chart on ESPN?
I don't know. Talk to them. Don't roll your eyes at me for
We'll talk
stating
to
that.
Elena.
But you're using their depth chart to give you some sort of thing here. They're just making it up.
But it's the fact is that I'm sitting there going, you need 9 sacks for Vaughn to have a successful year. Like, I also don't know what AJ is going to give. I like the sign. I'm not trying to sit here and play revisionist history, but like, I want AJ, the guy that, to your point, is coming off the bench and isn't in a starter's role. I don't think AJ Epinesa is a consistent starter or has proven that.
Well, then they're in trouble.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you're saying Vaughn's going to be a spot guy, and I'm sitting here going, I think AJ, I don't know if he's done enough to prove it, then who the hell's going to start? And who's the guy that's going to be out there consistently? Obviously, they have Greg Rousseau, but I'm sitting there and I'm looking and I'm going, shit, they need to find some sacks. And I know there were some comments about David Myers was asking, like, they got to add somebody. And maybe they do pick up a guy, here, but at the edge rush position. But I'm not overly thrilled with the options that the Bills are going to go with pass rusher, when the whole reason they signed Vaughn was because after so many years of not being able to get after the quarterback, they got Vaughn, and now it looks like they're right back to where they started.
Yes. and Jenna didn't even have to roll her eyes at you with that one. How about Javon Solomon? Can he give him anything?
Shout out, brother Bill.
Yes.
That's it.
See what he can do stepping up and.
But I
rookie,
think
obviously.
I think at the end of camp or sometime during camp, a veteran pass rusher.
Dave Myers wrote in 2 positions. I think the Bills should add a veteran, edge or safety.
I don't know about the safety as much.
I'm fine with safeties.
I mean, they did bring in Mike Edwards.
He's saying edge, though. I think that plays into what we are talking about.
Correct.
If anything, I think it would be corner for a veteran. Because
maybe.
I don't know, Jim.
Really?
I'm fine with safeties. I like the secondary.
I do too, but like you don't really have a lot. Well, I guess you'd prove what Kyer Elam would be.
Makes a difference there in terms of.
Okay.
But in terms of pass rushers, yes, it is a concern.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
level of concern, 1 to 10.
Don't point at me.
What's your question? Level of concern around what?
The pass rusher. Pass rushers.
To me, it's 7+, 7 to 8.
I was going to say
here
7
on Buffalo Plus. 7.
Well, I'm saying is
7
because
plus.
It is always a concern. It's a concern in big moments, even sometimes when teams put up numbers and you go, okay, and they had 8 against the Washington Commanders
9.
and it was 9. They get all this. But then when you need that pass rush, you don't have the guy. Just like we talked about the receivers. It's great to have numbers.
Yep.
But then when you need a play, who's there?
All right, we did mention the safeties. No Poyer, no Hyde.
Yeah.
Are the safeties set going into the season?
Set's an interesting.
I think we've lived with those two. Just put them out there.
Yeah.
And then you absolutely knew who they were. But we've also lived with moments. Certainly Hyde missed almost a whole season.
Yep.
Poyer missed time, tough as nails, but he couldn't stay on the field all the time. And there was a period of time when they were both out. And then it became like, how are they going to play it? I don't know. I honestly don't know what they think of Cole Bishop in terms of can he move into that spot at some point? I think if I'm guessing to start, I'm thinking it's probably going to be Mike Edwards and Taylor Rapp.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, that's what I thought. Who did you think?
DeMar.
Wow. I was going to ask if you thought DeMar would make the roster.
Looks good in OTAs.
Yes.
There's no, and again, I think we have to get back to DeMar Hamlin, the football player.
Oh yeah.
I think
you're the one making it not. Sorry.
No, well, you're sitting there going, is he going to make the team? Like, he was really good when he played.
Oh,
when he filled in for Mike Hyde, he had over 100 tackles.
He did.
Again, you forget that because he died on the field. So you have to get back to giving him going from special teams guy to this back again. And
he filled in well.
I played well.
Yeah.
They liked him. And again, Mike Edwards hasn't been able to get on the field, and we're not acting like Mike Edwards is some Pro Bowler here. Mike Edwards is another guy that was a backup spot starter guy in the last 2 places that he's played. So it's not like they signed
You're right.
a shoe-in starter. I think there's going to be competition, whether it's Bishop, whether it's Hamlin and Edwards.
Well, that's why, to Jenna's point, when you're asking this question, is I don't think it's set. It needs to be set.
I don't think I think it's set with, I don't think they go and add another safety to the position.
Yeah, I would say you already have
I agree.
a couple of veterans in Rapp and Edwards. Hamlin's been in the circumstances, and then you drafted a guy.
My assumption is, though, it's Edwards and Taylor Rapp.
That's the way I look
That's
at it
yeah.
too.
Can't wait to be right.
Oh wait. a
So
minute.
wait, is this your hot take?
No.
Okay. Who would you think you would start over? Edwards?
Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't even seen Edwards play.
I mean, that is true. I hear that. You can't even. I don't have hot takes. You
You actually thought that was serious?
okay. Interesting discussion.
Yeah.
All right, let's continue on.
We're getting this is our training camp. We're getting fiery.
Yeah.
The videos every day.
Yep.
Yes.
Just buckle up.
And a reminder, you can always find our podcast both available on YouTube as well as wherever you find your audio podcasts.
Yes.
Look at that. Seamless. Okay. No Poyer-Hyde. Let's talk Matt Milano. What will Milano look like and how impactful is that? I would say pretty impactful.
I think they're going to be smart with Milano, right? You have a whole nother month to ramp him up. The
Yeah.
guy knows the defense.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's somewhat limited during camp. Like, you know, guys only have so many snaps in them. He's coming back from
Yeah.
a serious injury. You mentioned it. You were on WGR radio, Dan was, saying it's great to see him out there. We've
Yep.
talked about it on the channel. But there's no reason to just, you know, I mean, Terrell Bernard was, you know, this close to playing in the last game. Milano was not.
Yep.
So I think you can bring him along. I think the guy is an exceptional player, but I don't think there's a reason to put that to the full test
Yeah.
for a little while in camp. So he may not be getting all the reps and all the time because they're gearing him up for the start of the season.
Play it safe. Play it slow.
But they're going to want to see him.
Yeah, I think there's a balancing act with that, though.
Yeah.
Considering what kind of injury he had and the severity of that and how much time he was out, you want him to be ready for the season, but you also, I feel like you kind of slow play it a little bit because you don't want to do too
week
much.
1. Yeah, you're aiming week 1 to really kind of let the reins off.
Isn't it funny? It's like, I was thinking of last year, and it was like Terrell Bernard was coming off an injury, hadn't done anything. We weren't sure. And then he just goes out week 1 and he's ready to go.
Yeah. And that's where another reason.
Don't bring him up.
Oh, I know.
I didn't say it. That's another reason why I think I'm still expecting to see a very high level of Matt Milano. I know the injury was bad. And if we've learned anything, knee injuries are not oil changes. Only an idiot would say that. And you go from it, but you understand the fact that Milano and Bernard, when they were together, were a damn good combo for those 4 games. So it's nice when you have a guy next to you that is also making splash plays. And that was Edmonds, Achilles heel was that he couldn't really make those. So I expect to see the same high level of Milano flying around and kind of seeing the same. I'm expecting to see the same caliber of play.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that would be, talk about exciting for Bills fans. Just what that would mean for that team.
I will say, I think fans are going to get excited about Dorian Williams this year because you're going to see him a lot in camp. You're going to see him a lot in the preseason.
Yes.
And that guy is an athlete.
He is.
He is going to be flying around the field.
Flying around.
And he's learning what's going on. Even when he played, when they put him in, what game was it during the year when he played due to injury? And they basically had to sit him down. Like he didn't anticipate properly.
Was that the Jacksonville game?
It might have been. It was, or maybe it was even earlier.
Because then Spector came in after it.
I think they really like Balin Spector, though. I do.
I mean, he's
special teamer.
He is.
I think they really
back
like
up.
him.
Get some snaps.
Break glass in case of emergency.
I think they are higher up than that on him. But I hear you. I think Dorian Williams is.
I think Dorian's got a very high ceiling as a athletic freak.
Yeah.
But we've heard Bobby Babich talk about the way that you go from Tulane with a playbook of this big to a playbook, an NFL playbook of this big. And it's very tough to be thinking and reacting as fast as Dorian Williams plays.
What'd Terrell Bernard say? Like year 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had it in a Giants game or something like that. And he said his head was spinning.
Yeah. And then give him that year being around everything.
Yep.
That's why we do it. We judge players. I mean, guys are getting judged at mini camps before they've played in a game. Like, this guy's no good.
Xavier Worthy's already going to be a Pro Bowler.
You guys have seen that play.
That did hurt, though.
It is. To me, if I was Kansas City and I see that play, I'm like, man, our defense is in trouble. Seriously, he got behind
Good
that
spin.
lousy defense.
That is a spin zone. Spin zone.
Oh my God. I tweeted that. I had a few Chiefs fans like, but I'm like, oh my God, just have a sense of humor for God's sakes. I
You've
mean,
won
it's
2
Mahomes.
Super Bowls.
Did you see
You pulled a
today?
stick out of your butt for a second. Like,
I mean, seriously. And Worthy can run. I made the joke that, wow, their defense, gave up a big play.
susceptible to deep shots.
Yeah. And people are like, yeah, well, I'm like, oh, shut up. Seriously.
No.
Even,
That's-
yeah.
It's a good one. A little
It was.
spin zone.
Yeah.
All right, you mentioned Babich. I think coordinators, that will be really
Massive.
something to watch this training camp. Defensively, will it be Babich calling the plays and taking over from McDermott? How do we think that dynamic will be? We've seen them around each other obviously quite a bit over the years, but now with Babich taking over the defensive responsibilities in terms of being the coordinator, do you expect to see it be like kind of that collaboration, or do you think it will be Babich kind of asserting himself more?
I think Bobby will call the plays week 1. I think that Mike and I were talking about it before we got on here. It's a lot easier to make a midseason change and for McDermott to take the play calling back than Sean in the middle of the season all of a sudden saying, hey, here are the keys. So I think that we talked about it before. Babich did have other opportunities. I don't know why he would. I mean, there's a couple of reasons why he likes being in Buffalo and all those things. But if you got a chance to say, hey, Sean, am I going to be calling plays? There had to be some inkling of, I want you to be the guy. And to take something off of Sean's plate, it will be a collaboration, just like Sean had input on Leslie's defense. But it will be, I think, Bobby Babich calling plays.
I want to see how he does kind of assert himself this training camp, because I think he will be calling the plays as well, because you're not turning down other opportunities to essentially be still the number 2 on a team defensively. So I mean, he is a guy that, brings a lot of juice. The players really seem to love him. I'm just curious how it will look in terms of training camp, what that process will be like for him. And just kind of seeing, Mike, like what that will look like, because for so long it had been Leslie Frazier and then it was McDermott. And now it's like a guy who's been with the team, but is also so young.
Yeah, he is, but he's been around. He's been with Sean. He's coached at different levels. He's ready for this. You do have an exceptional play caller. Sorry to some of you, in Sean McDermott as a defensive coach who's been around, has coached some tremendous defenses. I mean, obviously in Carolina, took a team to the Super Bowl as defensive coordinator, and he's done a very good job in Buffalo. We've talked about that a lot. To Dan's point, when he and I were talking about it, you have the whole offseason, all the OTAs, the mini camps, the training camp. That's when you get Bobby Babich, where he's ready to call these plays. And then Sean McDermott is there. I mean, sometimes I think people think this is Bobby Babich just sits there and goes, it's my defense now, and I'm going to call it. On offense, Joe Brady just says, it's all me. There is collaboration. There is the moment where the guy is calling the play.
Correct.
And maybe with McDermott, maybe there's a little more influence there with the head coach. That goes on. Andy Reid has a huge amount of input on what the Kansas City Chiefs do, because he's Andy Reid in doing that. And I think they get Babich ready and then let him go. Because we were saying, you don't say, oh, week 6, we got the Dolphins. I'm not looking at the schedule. Let's let Bob take over the plays.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen that way.
I was surprised.
Let's have Robert.
Yes. I was surprised by maybe I should have assumed, but sometimes not in the building, how close the relationship is with Babich and McDermott, coming up and kind of being a mentor to him in all of that. And he talked about how, Babich talked about the press conference during OTAs about, you never know you're ready until you're ready. You're trying to do it. I joked around, that was like being a parent. Like I'm ready for a kid. You don't know shit yet until it's hitting the fan, literally with diapers and stuff like that. So that I like the awareness from Babich. I like the fact that he's worked with the safeties, he's worked with linebackers. I like all of that familiarity, top to bottom. I think it'll be a nice adjustment, flair, slight curveball change of pace with fresh eyes on the play calling. But again, I think it's still going to be a damn good defense. A lot of the reason because Sean McDermott is the head coach.
Quickly, shout out to Bob Babich Sr.,
Yes.
subscriber to
Yes.
Buffalo Plus.
That was wild.
Came up to us at camp, at a mini camp.
Yeah.
And he was like, they love watching it. So we appreciate that. Plus the name.
It was one of those moments though when someone's looking at you and you think they're looking behind you. You're like, they can't be looking at me. Like, who's behind me?
Well, I mean, I certainly
He's got
remember
a
him.
Dan is
Yeah.
wrong look. He's like, every morning I wake up with a Dan is wrong cup of coffee.
And by the way, the name works either Bob or Bobby. It's a cool name to say.
Phenomenal.
It's either
Babich,
Bob
yeah.
Babbich or Bobby Babbich. Both of them work.
Yeah, the
It's a cool-
alliteration.
It's great.
Yeah,
It's a great
love it.
name.
All right,
Yeah.
talking about Babich though. Brady on the other side of things. Obviously, we again have familiarity with him taking over at the second half of last season. I know Ken Dorsey, you had reservations, Dan, just about how it would go. You're giving the keys to the Lamborghini to a guy that's really doesn't have a lot of experience. It's a great analogy. Now, I know you feel differently about Brady, but why?
Because he's failed before. That was my one concern, was the level of being worried about a guy that hasn't been there. And Babich actually talks about it. I haven't called plays before. I know I'm going to make mistakes. It's rolling with those punches kind of thing. The fact that Brady has struggled, is learning from those, has had success, whether it was at LSU, and now all of a sudden in that small sample size. I don't think it's tough for me to compare the sample size that we saw at the end of last year, which is the good and the bad. But he was kind of a chef without getting to pick his ingredients for his meals. So now he's going and he's the one that gets to go shopping for his ingredients to make the dishes. That's where there's a lot of pressure on what the identity, and it's so funny. We've been at times over the last few years, what is the identity of the Bills offense? What is their one thing they can depend on? And sometimes it's just been Josh Allen taking off and trying to hurdle linebackers. But there are so many new faces for Joe Brady to work with. So while I think there's a lot of pressure under him this training camp, because all of this, where at times it's like, oh, the offense had a bad day. Who cares? It's Diggs, it's Allen, it's these guys. You know what to expect. I don't know what to expect. Like, I expect Josh to play well. I expect Joe Brady to be creative in those things. But there is pressure to get the oven turned, preheated now to be ready.
While you're making your cooking analogies,
Yes,
who's
chef.
the Hall of Fame coach?
Bill Parcells.
Oh, you know that. Yes. Okay. Well, it's a little before your time. He said, if you're going to make the meal, they should let you shop for the groceries. Now, that was more about drafting players and picking players. I do agree with that. But to your point, he also doesn't have the players that you've come to depend on.
Correct.
So it'll be interesting to see how much different it is, because it's already different.
Yeah.
Like, it was going to be different because you changed the center on the offensive line and moved him over.
Mm-hmm.
And then you changed the whole wide receiver room, basically.
Yep.
And so you've taken a different approach roster wise. So it was going to change no matter what.
Yeah.
But I think he's walking in here with, he'll have a full training camp and the preseason and all those things.
I do think
to
the
get ready.
pressure is on early though for him to look good. What's it called when you're cooking and you like prep all your food? Mise en place.
I think it is.
Okay, probably absolutely.
No, I think you're right. Because
butchered
remember
that.
we got in this discussion.
Oh yeah.
I said it was the Holy Trinity, and that's just carrot, celery, and onion, pepper.
Onion, carrot, celery.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, whatever. But mise en place.
Yeah.
Like you have to
Mise
be
en
prepared.
place.
Yeah. Okay. Again, butchered it. But essentially, it's how prepped you are before you make your meal.
Yeah.
Having all that prep ready so that you can make it as efficient and effective as possible. And it's like training camp really is that for these guys. And for Brady, I think there is a lot of pressure for him to have it look good out of the jump, because we all know how narratives work, right? Like obviously at training camp, when you're having new faces and all this stuff, it's going to be a little bit slower. But if there's a lot of headlines that the offense is consistently struggling, what are they looking like? It's not going well. Like that will play nationally and be talked about. And
what are you talking about? People will be very patient. That's the way it is in the NFL. 5-6 weeks, just
do your thing.
It's like spring training hitting, and maybe the first month. People don't care. They really won't care at all.
Exactly.
But in years past, I really haven't cared. I remember even the preseason game, the Steelers, they looked awful.
That is,
and I said, who cares? Because you know what the dishes are going to come out at when it comes to week 1.
Yeah, and then the year.
That's actually very true. We were all like, "Oh my God," scared. And you're like, "Guys,
Yeah, but
it's
hold on.
fine."
They also played the Green Bay game.
So I was right.
Hold on. They also
Well,
played
no,
the
because the
Green Bay
offense
game.
didn't look
And
great.
the offense was tremendous in that Green Bay game. Josh just lit them up. They kept him in the game till like the third quarter.
Mhm.
And then they came out and were horrendous against the Steelers in the first game of the season. Because everybody was like, oh, they're ready to go. So it works either way, too. You can think.
Nah, it only works the way I want it to.
Oh, okay. Don't roll your eyes at me.
I'm really into the Bear.
Yeah, I
Deep
can
in-
Love
tell.
the Bear.
Deep in the 3rd season.
Oh, you're not
Nap-
done the third season
No,
yet?
the Napkins episode with
Yeah.
Tina, top 5
better
episode.
than Forks.
Not as good as Forks.
Okay, that episode
But
was really
Napkins was really good.
Love the
good.
Bear.
Yeah, watching that right now. All right. I do think too, the reason I have more faith in Brady, just real quick ending note, is I feel like he's able to call like play sequences a lot, but I feel like Dorsey he would call like plays, whereas I feel like Joe Brady can sequence things better.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel like, and I just feel like his rapport with Josh is different in a good way.
Dorsey's going to have a big year in Cleveland then, right? Because he's failed before.
He's even better off than he was.
Okay. Last thing,
Jerk.
a bonus, special teams. That to me,
gonna be
we
wild.
usually, when the special teams coordinator talks over the years of camp, would be like, get a coffee. You want to take a lap? This will be very interesting this season with the new kickoff stuff, with just in general what Tyler Bass is doing. You know, I don't even know, not to say I don't know what to make of it, but I just feel like that's going to be a very new wrinkle to the game in general.
We don't know what to make of it because they don't know what to make of it
Yep.
yet. I think there's a thought around the league. It's either going to be the new kickoff rules, and you guys have seen them, where you're lining the teams up 5 yards apart
Mhm.
down the field, so it's not the running down the field. I think there's a thought around this league that it's either going to be nothing happens or guys are breaking long plays
Yes.
all the time because they don't know, and it's a difficult thing. I won't say difficult to practice, but it is
Yes. Oh, it is.
to simulate what it's going to be like in a game.
To fly down the field. One of my friends played Division I football. And the special teams coach before like kickoffs would say, pull the pin.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
like-
but now you're not
that's-
running down the field.
Right. But it's also tough in that same aspect to simulate a kickoff at full speed in practice.
I'm also thinking like, will teams line guys up and then drop them into coverage basically? Because otherwise all you got is the kicker back there.
Right. So
And he kicks
and
it deep.
I know
Yeah.
we've had a few comments, whether it's on Twitter or about what are our opinions on this. I don't like talking about things I don't know anything about.
Yes, you do.
You really set yourself up for that.
I walked into that one. But I just have no idea. But I will pay attention more at camp this year when they do special teams. But besides that, I have no idea what to expect.
I mean, the kickoff became just almost worthless. I mean, so many of them go out of the end zone or, so they're trying to make it more interesting
Yes.
and take away some of the injury risk.
Do the Bills have a kicking problem, Dan?
No.
Heard it here first.
God,
But
I am rooting for Tyler Bass.
But I will be charting his kicks during camp.
I am rooting for Tyler Bass because I think he's a good player and I think he's
And
been
they
a good.
paid him a lot of money.
But Dan's all in on this, so if it goes the other way,
That is.
flip the cup.
He took the mug away. Oh, it's up there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
There
out
is
of frame.
there is
Oh.
a little bit of just digging my heels in on this one. Really need a big bounce back here for Tyler. Come on. Just digging my heels in.
Okay, let's answer just a couple questions real quick. Sherbani Chatterjee
okay.
wrote in, how safe is McDermott's job?
About as safe can get.
Yeah, I see these dimwits. They're talking about Bill Belichick coming to Bill Belichick is not coaching the Buffalo Bills.
No.
They're not doing that.
No.
I mean, you have Brandon Beane as your general manager. It just doesn't make any sense to me at all. Bill Belichick, to be Bill Belichick, he wants to come in.
Mhm.
Now, does that change after a year where he didn't get hired and he would come in? I guess. I just do not see this Buffalo Bills organization making that call. And what would have to Sean McDermott, again, you have to say to yourself, this guy has to take you to the next step. And obviously, Bill Belichick has done that 6 times in his career as
Yeah.
a head coach. but not in the last how many years. And it was not great for him at the end in New England. Do not see that as a fit. That would be alarming to think that the Bills would, one, consider moving on from McDermott, and two, that you would do that for a defensive head coach when you have Josh Allen as your quarterback.
Yeah, you would need to be historically bad. You would have to be publicly embarrassing as a franchise to move on. And the kicker we always don't talk about is I don't think Terry Pagula wants to pay another coach not to be coaching. Like fans always say, fire the coach, fire the coach. And they always go, you pay him $30-something million not to be here.
The only plus is I think McDermott would earn another job quickly. I mean, he's turned this organization around, and then they get an offset of the money. So whatever he's making,
just saying,
and what the other team
he's
pays,
not getting fired.
He's not getting fired. No.
I agree. And I think especially after last season and kind of the trials and tribulations he went through as a coach, the team did as well.
And they rallied.
Around him.
I'm trying to remember what happened.
I just think that they are immensely connected, and they're riding with their guy.
Yes.
Okay.
And Bean too, by the way.
Yep.
I mean, a lot of you jump right in on McDermott. I think Bean's done an overall very, very good job. It's a big year for him.
It is a big year for him. Sorry,
Yeah.
hair stuck on my finger. Okay, questions. How do the Bills and Chiefs rosters match up? Where do the Bills have the roster edge? Frank Deal wrote that in.
Secondary.
Bills roster advantage.
I think defensively at linebacker and at secondary.
Linebacker, yes.
Yeah. And secondary maybe overall. Yeah. It's hard to say. That's the only team in the league that I would say you don't have an advantage at quarterback.
Correct.
The only one. Yeah.
Advantage. Now you make arguments for other players to be close to Josh, whatever you think.
Yeah.
Obviously, some people think Burrow, which he's proven that at times, but there's some other players that are very good. You wouldn't say wide receiver. You wouldn't say necessarily offensive line, defensive line. Again, I think that the Chiefs have done a great job of redoing that team in many ways and still maintaining the level that they've been at, which is kind of what the Bills are trying to do, except to take another step up. You're the 2-time Super Bowl champs. And it's tough to say that there's an area that you're considerably better.
You saw that ESPN bet tweet that's like, will the Chiefs be the first team to win?
You had a funny gif.
3 straight.
Funny meme.
Yeah.
It's 97 degrees in this room.
It's so hot.
Yeah. You're in a quarter zip.
Yeah, I'm very comfortable.
It's so hot here.
It is. Okay, let's do one last question, then our hot takes really fast.
Hotter than this room.
Yeah. Todd H76 wrote in, who do you think is under the radar heading into camp? I always love that question.
I think Todd, in his question, brought up Dwayne Carter and Ray Davis. Again, haven't really seen anything out of Ray Davis because he's been battling an injury during minicamps and OTAs. Dwayne Carter is an interesting one because that's not a position that you really get wowed by. Like you can eat, Daquan Jones was really good and he just ate up blocks and freed things up for other people. So I think DeMar could be an under the radar guy.
Yeah.
That again, we're forgetting the football player. But I'm trying to think of Justin Shorter, obviously.
Who do you think will be a training camp darling?
Justin Shorter. Well, we really didn't get a chance. We saw him a little bit. Then he hurt the hamstring last year.
What'd you say?
The bit is just so good.
Oh, that's not what I thought he said.
I was like, what? Sorry.
That's a training camp darling. Everybody likes the training camp darling. Oh, she's going to keep laughing.
Yeah, she's lost it.
Not high. Okay, sorry.
I'm going to go back to Dorian Williams.
Okay, sorry.
Under the radar.
That's a good pick.
Dorian
and again,
Williams is
because
a good one.
we're going to be seeing how Milano progresses,
Mm-hmm.
and Dorian Williams is going to get snaps, I think, during camp, during the preseason, maybe even during the season. I don't know how they're going to play things with Milano. So I think they feel pretty good about him.
I think Zach Davidson.
I was gonna say Zach Davidson.
I think he will be the training camp darling.
She beat me to
Is
it.
the twerking? Is
Yeah,
what it's
that
gonna
he
be?
was twerking.
Zach Davidson put on a show for us
Yep.
at a mini camp.
Yes, caught a touchdown, twerked in the end zone.
That's to remind me of what Jenna already did. Thank you, Jenna.
Yeah, look at me.
That's
doing
it.
something.
Zach
Yes,
Davidson
he
was one.
and it was not as well received by the defense.
Yeah, honestly, I
No,
was just
the offense.
I
Matt
was
Collins didn't like it.
yeah, I was truly impressed.
Matt Collins could be a training camp darling. Personality wise,
He'll be signing a lot of
He'll be
That's a good, yeah.
he'll be
not
signing a
wearing
lot of,
shoes.
not wearing shoes. We're gonna sit down with him early on in camp.
Yeah.
The most interesting player
That's gonna be a good story.
on the Bills roster.
Yeah.
Doesn't use silverware. Just eats with his hands.
hands.
Eats with his hands.
That's a choice.
I get grief sometimes. I'll use my hand on the plate for something, and Jenny, my wife.
What do you mean?
Like you're trying to pick something off the plate, and you might, instead of using a knife end together.
Yeah, that's fair game.
Oh no, not with her. Like if you put your hand, she's
Just
like
5-star dining at the
no, just at
Catalana
the
household?
house. She's like, that's disgusting.
I
I'm
think
like,
it's gross when people eat like
well, I'm not grabbing.
No, but he's talking about like the fork
yeah.
and using the.
Oh, you're
you
supposed
just
to
use the knife.
So you always have. Do you set out 5-star
Don't you
silverware?
always ask, do we need a knife for dinner tonight?
Yeah.
Like I'll always say,
Yeah.
what do we need?
I agree with Jenny.
Of course you do.
Jenny is
Women.
always right. Okay. Hot takes, other than it's 1 billion degrees in this room.
Go
Any
ahead,
hot
Jenna.
takes?
You bet lead off.
No, I'm not good at this.
You got one, Mike?
I'm waiting for you because you
See?
have to start it out.
No. See, why do I have to start it out?
Because you're gonna have 8.
No, I only got one,
Go
and
ahead.
I'm just sticking to it. I will say this season, MVS will have more receiving yards than Shakir.
Interesting.
Okay.
I have a hot take.
Go ahead.
I think Shakir will have more receiving yards than MVS. Ooh. That's how you know you got a mad when they just do that noise.
Okay.
We should bet on it. What do we want to bet?
Hold on.
MVS.
Oh,
Hold
I
on.
still need. I still
Sorry.
owe you beer.
Yeah, you still owe me beer.
Dang.
I'm going to say Curtis Samuel has more receiving yards than either one of those players. That's our bet.
I like that.
Okay.
I have Curtis Samuel. You have Khalil
Watch it be
Shakir,
Justin Shorter.
and you have MVS.
Okay. Deal. We should also do our season predictions,
Yeah,
but like we should have a bet or something that goes into that.
sure.
Okay.
We got time.
And do you have to pay up the bet or be like Dan and not pay up the bet?
I mean, I would never. It's so embarrassing.
Yeah, I'm on that.
What was the beer?
6-pack of
It
Stella.
was 6-pack against a case.
I tried a land shark.
Phenomenal.
Land Shark's
Really
good.
good. Never
Yeah.
had that before.
Very good beer.
Very tasty.
Boat beer, lake beer.
Yeah, I had it after
Land
volleyball.
Yeah.
Big fan.
That's not on a boat or on
well,
a lake.
it's a beach volleyball. Beach
Okay.
volleyball.
Oh, how
That's
did you play? You would think long
I
arms.
think
tall.
when people see me walk on the court, they're like, "Oh shit," and then they watch me play, they're like, "Oh,
Oh, shit."
Okay. We want to thank everyone for joining us. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, as well as share. We are approaching training camp. A reminder: we will be posting daily videos of what happened at camp, who stood out for a good reason, who stood out for probably a not so great reason, as well as what the players and coaches are saying. You can find that in every video available on the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel. Again, like, comment, subscribe. Also available an audio podcast. So be sure to subscribe to that wherever you listen to your podcast. For Mike Catalana and Dan Fates, I am Jenna Cottrell. Thank you so much for listening over this off-season period. We truly appreciate it. We'll catch
We've
you.
made it.
We made it.
Next time you'll hear us, training camp.
Training camp. Love
Football's
it.
back.
All right. Love you guys. We'll see you next time.